Hi, I'm Cathy Clark, Faculty Director of CASE and CASE I3 at Duke's Fuqua School of Business. My research for the past 20 years has been around using the power of business to address social and environmental problems. I became fascinated with how capital invested with intentions around impact can bring impact to a scale that truly matters. And that fueled my interest in a new investment discipline called impact investing that I, together with Case and my colleagues around the world, have been studying and developing for over 20 years. Today, you might not know, one out of every $5 professionally invested in the US is screened for environmental, or social impact. I wanted to give this background to my topic today. It informs why I became a little obsessed a few weeks ago with the subject of cash relief for entrepreneurs during the COVID-19 crisis. And I know that it will have an immediate impact on millions of people's lives. So welcome. I'm delighted to be here hosting a session in Fuqua's LinkedIn Live series. Fuqua faculty members will be holding live Q&A sessions every Wednesday, like today, at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time as part of this series. And you can follow Fuqua on LinkedIn to be alerted to these and other events. Today, I want to tell you a little bit about the issues that small business and nonprofit entrepreneurs are facing due to COVID-19. Today is April 15th, and we are about a month to 6 weeks, depending on where you live, into the pandemic in the US. Around the world, as many of us know, the impact on business and daily life has been even more strict. Most of the globe's trade and commerce has ground to a halt without warning and with no clear restart date in sight. On average, according to a study of over 600,000 small businesses done by JP Morgan, the median small business holds only 27 cash buffer days in reserve. That means on average, small companies have less than 4 weeks of cash on hand. We also know that small businesses in labor-intensive or low-wage industries hold fewer days of cash in hand, and on average, they have about half as many. So this means that in the COVID-19 environment, every business has become what we call an impact business. Every nonprofit, every community organization as well, they're having to make severe, important choices about how to stay afloat, whether to cut employees' pay or time, whether to pay rent, whether to temporarily shut down, or whether to permanently close. And when you let go of workers in the US, they lose not only their ability to pay rent and buy food, but often their health insurance. During a pandemic, that's clearly a potential wrecking ball on people's lives. So if you care about impact and social well-being, as we do at CASE at Fuqua, you can't not care about how entrepreneurs will fare during this crisis. And that's really the impetus that led us to create a new site called covidcap.com. It's meant as a site for entrepreneurs everywhere to identify capital relief that they can get in their community right now. And it's really aiming to solve two problems. One is that there is a lot of new money available for them that is coming online every day, but it's hard to find what's right for you. It's a little bit easier to find some local resources, but they're often the smallest. And then there are a lot of national and global resources that are nearly impossible for small entrepreneurs to find. So I came across this a few weeks ago and said, maybe this was something that I and our group could help with. And so we put together an initial list of things that we were able to find online. We Googled, we went to a bunch of intermediaries that we know in the impact space who have been very active in this. And then we crowdsourced with that network on top. And within about 2 days, we had 90 resources that was larger than any of the other lists that we had seen in that first period. And so on the next day, March 26th, we launched covidcap.com as a searchable website to help any entrepreneur in the world locate the cash resources for them. Today, it's still a little bit unique because it contains listings not just for for-profit businesses, but also for nonprofits. It includes grants, loans, and other cash equivalents like fee reductions or tax relief. And it is local all the way to global, so that you can search for what's available to you wherever you are. We've had this up for a little over 2.5 weeks. And I'm going to share my screen to show you what the site looks like and talk you through some of our current stats. So you can see here on our homepage that we immediately take you into a search. Today, the site contains over 450 resources and lists that are offering more than $370 billion. 58 of them are global, which means they are serving 2 or more countries. 123 of them are national, which means they are serving, whoops, I clicked a little too far there. They're serving 1 country. And about 60% of those right now are serving the US. And most of them are what we call regional, which is within a country. So they're a state, a city, a region, a set of states, et cetera. And most of those 268 resources right now are based in the US, although we can as the platform, we can hold many others. We've had thousands and thousands of people visit the site in the past 2.5 weeks. Which has been extremely satisfying to see. I wanted to, while I'm sharing my screen, just show you a few ways that you can use this site to search extremely effectively, which is, of course, the whole idea. So let's say you were looking for relief and you're a woman entrepreneur. We have a full text search, so you can click on the little search icon, you can enter women, and it will instantly show you what are the national and regional resources that are available for women entrepreneurs. And you could do the same thing at the regional level, and you could see that there are quite a few, some US-based ones and some within different states. You can also do the same sort of search, but only within loans or only within grants. So you could say, I really only want cash that I don't have to pay back, and maybe I want it only, I'm in Michigan. So we encourage you to do searches of your state, of your city, et cetera. And very quickly, you have a list of all the things that are listed in the state of Michigan. We also have a host button at the bottom here, so you can actually look by the person who is offering, the organization or entity that is offering the relief. As I said, we have hundreds and hundreds of them. It ranges from foundations, city and state and federal governments, private companies, and nonprofit and multilateral organizations. So it's quite diverse. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back for a second. So I wanted to let you know that I'm going to start taking questions in just a few minutes. So, but first I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of the 3 main things that we've learned in putting this site together so far. So if you want to start putting your questions in to the LinkedIn chat, that would be great while I'm talking. I wanted to give you a chance to do that. So the first lesson is that big money is coming, but a lot of it is getting stuck on the way. This is an unprecedented problem to try to save every business and every nonprofit in the country at the same time, let alone what's going on globally. So we have in the US, which my colleagues David Robinson and Cam Harvey have talked about in past LinkedIn Live sessions, the new CARES Act, which was signed into law two weeks ago, the day that we actually launched this site, which includes a very large allocation from the Small Business Association through something called the Paycheck Protection Program. That is the largest allocation. It's $350 billion. Which is to go to businesses and nonprofits with less than 500 employees. It's a really great program because it helps businesses make their payroll by giving them a loan to cover payroll expenses now. And if they keep people employed through December, the loan is partially forgivable. So the great news is that the federal government in the US is trying to roll this out extremely quickly. The challenge is that it's a huge new program on an unprecedented scale. And it depends on a set of intermediate organizations who were really not prepared for it. Many national banks are experiencing an overload of demand. Some of them stopped their application process after the first day because they had too many applications and they could not figure out how to actually handle them. Some of them are waiting for clarification on some of the rules. And so some estimate it will be another 3 to 6 weeks, possibly, for some entrepreneurs before that cash is in hand. As of yesterday, the SBA, excuse me, reported over 1 million loans have been approved by nearly 5,000 intermediaries, totaling 247 billion. So in the first week, 247 of the 350 billion that the federal government has made available has already been claimed. It hasn't necessarily been paid out, but it's been claimed. We also know, according to the National Federation of Independent Businesses, that as of 5 days ago, 70% of US small businesses have applied for a CARES loan. It doesn't mean that they've been approved. So if 70% have applied and 2/3 of the money is already allocated, it looks as if the 350 billion will not be enough. And so that is also in discussion at the congressional level. We think this is important to realize and to keep track of because we're hoping that our resource, covidcap.com, could be used in the interim by businesses and organizations to see what cash they can get quickly from other sources. We recommend that entrepreneurs look not only to their banks, but to community organizations, community banks, community development finance institutions, some of whom have radically outperformed the national banks in terms of getting the money out the door fast, and also allowing the smallest enterprises to compete with larger enterprises for those funds. And so that's been important to see. A second learning is that most of the offerings, as I showed you, 268 out of 450, are what I call hyperlocal. They are targeted within communities. The US state and local governments have moved dramatically fast and have been very impressive. Most of the listings that we put up were less than a week old when we found them. And that has continued to add. And so there's just a lot of, I have to say that in the middle of this crisis, personally, having the opportunity to see every day what positive things people are doing to help entrepreneurs has been very inspiring. The last thing is that I would say this has all been very urgent. This is like the first wave, which is just urgently, how do you get cash out the door? There's still a lot of creativity. There are funds that I did a search for women. There are funds. I'll give you some interesting examples. There's something called the Red Backpack Fund, which was started by Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, along with Global Giving, who's making at least $5,000 grants to women entrepreneurs in the U.S. Google has partnered with a group called Opportunity Finance Fund to strengthen the nation's community development finance institutions. In Austin, Texas, there's a specific local relief fund just for food and beverage because they have so many wonderful food and beverage organizations. They want to keep them afloat. And then there's some amazing offerings around the world that are more focused on health relief than just economic relief. So for example, in Africa, there's a fund that's giving grants to organizations who are designing solutions to last mile communication, supporting the most vulnerable in society, helping to ramp up local production of essential medical supplies, and supporting the food value chain, which they're worried might get a little strained over the next months. So I'm going to take a first question, which is, how did you get this off the ground so fast? Who helped you? I am delighted to report that this has been a mostly volunteer effort, and a lot of wonderful students and alumni have reached back out to us to help, both with data entry and with some of the back-end site maintenance, which has been great. And then I'm even more delighted, or as delighted, to mention some other institutions that have stepped in. So I want to give a huge shout out to Mission Investors Exchange, which is a alliance of philanthropic organizations who do impact investing. They have personally donated staff time to us, connected us to others. and helped us with press and marketing. We've had very wonderful experiences with other organizations like Big Society Capital in the US and the UK, Living Cities here in the US, and USAID, which is the development arm of the US government, all of whom have helped us start to share lists. So what we've moved from is little one-off of here's something that's interesting to realizing that there are many other institutions around the world who are bringing together lists, and we're trying to make sure that we all share the same information and get it out. I also just wanted to give a huge shout out to someone named David Norris, who is a generous individual who stepped in a week ago to help me run this, help us run this on a day-to-day basis. And during that time, we've doubled the resources available on the site. So thank you, David. The next question is from Jan Cooper of Tennessee. He says he or she is a student at Milligan College. The question is, do you think that despite this severe recession, we will see a big and rapid upswing? I think, I guess the caveat I would say is I am not an economist. We have many at Fuqua who can answer this question better. I do think that this recession is different. I was on a call yesterday and someone said some things that I thought were very wise, and I'm going to repeat. She said, you know, in the recession 12 years ago, it was basically the financial industry that had created some products that rippled throughout the economy. This time, it is not one industry, it is not one geography. And so we are facing a set of concurrent problems that are really systemic. And so I think the solutions, she said, and I agree, her name is Clara Miller, and she used to run the Heron Foundation. She said, I don't think a big and rapid upswing is in the cards. I think this is going to be a series of slower rollouts over time. Another question is, as with any crisis like this, the impacts on marginalized communities is often worse than more well-off communities. Have you seen any examples of funders trying to mitigate this issue? That's a really good question, and we have. I think that I mentioned before that there are intermediaries who are trying to handle the biggest amounts of cash. We know that the Community Development Finance Institutions, which is a network of institutions across the US that were created after some legislation in the US passed in the 70s, their mission is to address the needs of low-income communities, and they have been completely leading the way in terms of serving marginalized communities and the entrepreneurs that live in those communities. And I'll give you a tangible example. Darren Williams is the CEO of Southern Bancorp, which is located in Little Rock, Arkansas. He said his bankers processed $16 million in Paycheck Protection Program loan applications in one day last Friday, which was the first day, which was multiples of what most of the banks processed. At the same time, he was able to process very small applications. He said he processed an $8,000 loan for an African-American owned radio station and a request for less than $2,000 from a small photography studio in Northeast Arkansas. And those of us who understand banking know that it's extremely difficult to process the smaller ticket items. The community development funds are doing that, and they're paying very close attention to how to serve the organizations most in need. We have another question from Sami Hakana in Durham. Have you heard of any specific sources that have been able to deploy funding more quickly while businesses wait for the Paycheck Protection Program? And we have. A very interesting one has actually come up just yesterday. The SBA approved Square, PayPal, and Intuit to distribute loans. So many of you know these as technology finance companies, but they have not been designated by the government as loan distributors. Intuit, through its subsidiary QuickBooks Capital, announced yesterday it's accelerating the application process through automation by applying artificial intelligence in its relationships with its customers. And I can give a personal story about that, which is that my husband runs a small business and I am his bookkeeper. And last night I was on QuickBooks and I got a pop-up window giving me a quiz saying, we want to help you get cash relief and try to find the right resources for you. And it took about 2 minutes and I had excellent information by the end. And so the lesson there is the tech cavalry is coming to make this more efficient for us, which I think is great. Another question is from Zain Mahmood, who is a operating partner, advisor, CEO. What are you hearing from foundations and family offices? Are they still interested in investing in startups and ventures? I would kind of divide those. I think the foundations, on large part, are starting with the set of grantees they already have, and basically listening and saying, what do you need? And so we have listed in the database, and I've heard talk of, there are several very large philanthropic consortiums of private foundations who are saying, we want to relax our restrictions. We want to get rid of the reporting for the rest of the year. We want to figure out how to get you fast, unrestricted cash for whatever it is that you need. And I think that's wonderful. In terms of family offices, I don't think I have a good definitive answer on that. What I've kind of heard through the grapevine is that a lot of family offices, if they are managing portfolios, are really taking a step back and trying to, the recession has hit them. What are their goals now? What is the risk that they're willing to take? How do they assess what's happened to their portfolio and what to do about it? And so I think there is less investment activity right now. I think that will ramp up again, and I think we'll move from what I'm now talking about and what COVID CAP is about, which is about immediate cash relief, to what I think the impact investing community and the philanthropists and family offices are totally poised for, which will be rebuilding capital, which will be all of the innovations and all of the needs that we have to scale up the solutions to the new world that we're going to be living in, maybe for some time, where some of the interactions that we depended on before face to face will not be possible, and so or will be periodically possible. And so I think that's going to be an interesting terrain for impact investors and others to fit into. There is a question from an alum named Rod Dubitsky. His question is, how many of these borrowers will be able to repay? That is a great question. And so that is one of the reasons that in the tool we have both grants and loans. So grants, obviously, you don't need to repay. And there are many more grants available right now because emergency relief, people understand that is an important thing. The SBA program is primarily a loan program. There are some little grants, like you can get $10,000 grant up front while you're waiting for the loan, things like that. But as and part of this is, again, they've decided to prioritize payroll, which is, if we keep you paying your employees, it is more likely than if you didn't pay your employees that you could earn some revenue to pay back this loan. So it's an arrangement that some people are going to have to make of, is this worth the risk of me taking on another loan, for the idea that if I keep employees, I can keep my revenue going, or keep it going at a lower level and then maybe increase it later. And so there is a risk there. There's a risk there to any business who doesn't want to or shouldn't be taking on a loan, but on the other hand, there's a broad array of businesses who will greatly increase their opportunity to keep revenues or to bring back revenues if they don't have to let all of their workforces go. And from a social impact point of view, that's obviously very aligned as well. In terms of, there's one more question I'm going to take there from Evelyn Churro, who is the founder and CEO of Global Partners United. She said, can you be specific about the funding from Africa around vulnerable populations? And I wish I could. We do have some funding that we have found out about. We have quite a few resources in South Africa and Nigeria. And there is a bunch of funding that we have featured through USAID, which is focused on health. So, if there are organizations who are, not being affected by COVID, but are trying to prevent more difficulties due to COVID, there is quite a bit of international health-specific funding available. I have not seen, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, I have not seen the same sort of national efforts coming top down from many of the governments in Africa outside of the ones I mentioned. So we're trying to, we're trying to expand our network of knowledge so that those resources can come to us. Let's see. There is a question from Jan Cooper. Do you think it will be difficult to allocate the money to important, essential small cap companies? Yeah, I think it's hard to get large amounts of money to many, many small companies. And, when I think about my own network of relationships, right, within a community, my hairdresser, my grocery store, my dry cleaner, right, I think most of those people have not dealt with the kind of bureaucracy and paperwork that is required for some of these things. And so there's a lot of handholding and capacity support that's also going on, whether it's from QuickBooks or from a community development institution or from other Chamber of Commerce and other organizations on the ground to help entrepreneurs who do not have as much experience in this do what they need to do in a very rapid manner, which is hard for everyone. I mean, this is a very hard time in that way. Another question is kind of what is our short-term and long-term goals? What are our short-term goals and long-term goals with COVID cap? And so short-term, we're really trying to get the word out on two fronts. One is we want to list more. Send us your relief packages. We have a form that you can fill in at covidcap.com. Send us, we will put it up on the site immediately, and are so happy to do that. And the second is just help us share. We want every entrepreneur in the country to know what is available to them right now before it's too late. We feel really a huge sense of urgency about this, and everyone who's on this call could take the covidcap.com and send it to 5 people, or put it on LinkedIn, or share it through email with your family members to share in their communities, that kind of thing. Longer term, we're interested in understanding if this relief is serving the needs of small business and nonprofit entrepreneurs. It's one thing to say, here is what's on offer. It's another thing to say, is this money actually going to where it's most needed? What kind of relief is missing? What other things do governments and impact investors and others need to create for the people who are not getting served by the money that's currently offered? Is it actually flowing as expected? I give you a whole bunch of stats because the SBA is starting to account for what is actually approved and going out of the door. Most other institutions don't do that publicly. How can we increase the transparency? And then, of course, the ultimate question is, did it have the impact that we hoped? When people get these loans or get these grants, does it help them stay in business, and does it help them adapt in the way that we want? And we're currently in several discussions with groups about how we can collaboratively address these questions through longer term research, which is, definitely a longer term issue than the current problem in hand, but we think very important because we know how important small business and small organizations are to the economy, and we need to build more resiliency for entrepreneurs globally. So with that, I'm going to thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a great discussion. Please visit covidcap.com. Leave us any questions or comments that you were not able to ask, or find us on LinkedIn. Please share the site, as I mentioned, with any small business or nonprofit who is making their way through these issues. If you are an entrepreneur and you are currently raising capital, especially investment capital, please consider signing up for a tool called Case Smart Impact Capital, which is our professional online training program, which has been used by 25,000 entrepreneurs around the world, which is part of the network that allowed us to put this together so quickly. All of our resources are available at caseatduke.org, CASEATDUKE at duke.org, and also at our Twitter feed, which is at caseatduke. And please come back a week from now for the next session in our series. The Fuqua LinkedIn Live faculty host on April 22nd will be John Graham, who is director of Fuqua's CFO survey, and he'll be discussing how levels of CFO optimism today compare with that of the Great Recession.